Hello, welcome back to the Forbidden Land podcast, the somewhat weekly podcast that I try to do. um, I shaved, so that's why I look really strange. If you've seen the other episodes and noticed that I look like a weirdo. So, the last episode I did was the live Forbidden FM episode. And I had some fun doing that. I felt like it was more like a live stream than a podcast, so I was able to talk a lot more and I felt more comfortable taking pauses on there, so there wasn't any dead air. And it's up on the channel. The VOD is edited into a podcast episode, and it's on Spotify. It's on the main Spotify, and it's on its own separate Spotify. So that way, if someone wanted to listen to it separately from the other ones, then they could. So, so recently, I've noticed that a lot of YouTubers and streamers are just quitting. I noticed it with Seth Everman. He quit back in November, I think. And then this educational YouTuber I watch named Tom something, I don't remember his last name. He recently quit, and then the most recent one is Pokimane is no longer streaming. And so, all these creators are pretty big, and they've been doing it for a long time. But then, a small creator like me who doesn't have a lot of recognition or anything, doesn't have a large fan base, I started thinking about it because I have technically been doing this for over 10 years now. And I started pondering, do I just stop? It's 2024. I started doing this in 2013. It'll be technically 11 years in May, but for my main channel, it'll be 11 years in October. And, even though I never got any kind of popularity off of this, there's still that part of me that is like, should I just go ahead and retire? I'm in my early 20s. I do this and don't get a lot of attention on them. So do I just go ahead and stop? And then there's the sunk cost fallacy of well, what about all my equipment and everything that I've invested into this? My plans to get an Elgato at some point. So ultimately that has led me to the conclusion that I might not stop completely, but I might flat out limit how much I do this. So what that would mean is that after the year 2024, I might decide to keep doing the podcast somewhat regularly, because I do enjoy just doing this. I enjoy, the scene transitions and doing all the stuff that I would do on here, look at this guy, huh? Look at him. He's cool, right? I enjoy doing stuff like this. I have the second cam plugged in and everything. This whole design was designed I want to say a year and a half ago. Probably 2 years ago, because I started streaming again 2 years ago. So, see what I mean? This is kind of fun. I think the reason I do this is because I'm still trying to stay in touch with the stuff I was learning and training how to do before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I was pretty seasoned in directing local TV shows and scene switching, and I was basically a audio engineer at that point. I'm fully trained to be one. So I think that's why I still like doing this. And it's also the fact that I've been doing it for so long now. Like, why stop? But I did kind of stop in 2020. And so, part of it is like at some point I'm obviously going to get bored of this. But I think what I'll do is that in 2025 onwards, I will stream when I feel like it. Um, I'll still make videos occasionally if I feel like it. If I feel like there's a video worth making. And I might still keep up the podcast, but I don't know. Because the podcast is a decent amount of work. Coming up with stuff to talk about every week and then rendering all this out is like a 2-hour ordeal on the post side. The actual recording side is at least an hour, but post is like 2 hours because you have to edit it, render all of it, upload all of it, format it, make a thumbnail, all that. So, come up with a title, the description, do the chapters. I have to scrub through the podcast while I'm editing it and write down the chapters. So, it's a whole thing. So I might still do this, whether it be like, twice a month or something like that, a special event. But for 2024, it's a grind. And by grind, I mean I'm going to keep doing the regularly scheduled shit that I was doing before. So that's kind of the plan. It is kind of sad though to come to that conclusion because for years I've thought about that. At least for the last 5 years, I've thought I should just pause the YouTube channel and stop uploading videos on it, which is what I kind of did. On my channel right now, all of my recent videos are from just the last 2 years, but before 2022, the last time I had uploaded anything was a podcast episode in 2020. So, and before that, it was like one-off videos here and there, some memes. I think the last like a podcast episode here and there. I think the last legitimate video I uploaded was, oh my god, it's really far back. Shit. The last like legit video I ever posted was in February 2018. And from there on it was like memes and podcast episodes. So I guess I just really gave up on it after that. And and another factor in that was because my computer was my brand new computer was broken. The CPU was failing in it, and I was crashing all the time, and I had to send it away to get fixed, and then eventually I got it back. And it's actually crazy to think about that I sent my PC away for 2 weeks and got it back with a new CPU and a broken CPU fan. But in 2017 I had lost my PC for a bit, and it was broken pretty much that whole year. So that kind of killed the momentum I had, because I think before that I was uploading like once a day. So I haven't done much in the last 5 years. So, obviously the thought of quitting has been on my mind for a long time. But I think the recent wave of all these creators stopping has made me reconsider it. Like, if a creator with all this success, basically sitting on this large pile of like a gold mine basically, and they still decide I'm going to quit. I mean, YouTube's like top YouTuber PewDiePie quit at some point, and he now just like occasionally does videos if he feels like it. And he even did like that drawing video recently where he spent 100 days drawing and trying to get better at it. And now he has a family and everything. So it's a whole dilemma of, I might as well quit now. Uh Before I just end up getting burned out and like unceremoniously quitting. So, God, there's so much dust on my desk. I have a harmonica and it's just super dusty. A lot of dust on my monitor stand. Ow. How do I deal with dust accumulation? So, recently I recorded a setup video for my stream and recording setup, and I think I might not edit that. I don't know. I might edit it. But I figured might as well show it in the podcast how I do this. In the setup like that I use for recording these. I did just realize I kept all my streaming stuff up, which I don't need for a podcast. um so I guess I'll show what my setup looks like, cuz it is kind of a brain numbing to look at. I definitely have one of the more like schizophrenic setups. So right now I'm on the main camera, and earlier I cut to the side cam, which is literally right next to me, attached to a shelf with a gorilla pod, like an old gorilla pod that I still have. And then there's the display, which this is the OBS setup. I record on OBS. This is the display, and then I use transitions. I think where can I see my transition? Is it just like baked into this or something? So I have a transition that I use where it does this like liquid kind of effect. I'm not sure where I would even go to change that, but I have the cut, the fade to black, this slider which kind of does like a midway transition, which is kind of neat. And then all my audio settings. I have a lot of audio inputs and outputs. This whole setup is a little nuts. Like I have the title card with the water in the back. One thing I will point out about the scenes. So the camera in the corner here, the side cam basically, is not a camera. It's a this is gonna get really trippy looking. It's a scene. So you can't even see it. Hold on. This is a scene. So instead of having the camera and having to adjust it across every scene, I have just the camera on here, and then I export this scene to everywhere else. And the reason I do that is because, let's say, I have John on. Well, he's on Discord, so I enable the Discord thing to show up, and then when I go to display, it's already in the corner. So I don't have to go and readjust it or anything. Realistically, I can get rid of this. I don't have to go in and readjust it or anything. I just put it on the camera. Obviously, I've never encountered a situation where I need to have multiple cameras on screen at once, so I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But yeah, that's the setup for the podcast pretty much. And and I guess I'll show these scenes with the water in the back. There's two different forms of it. There's this one, and then there's one that shows the display. So that's that's like, the full scene setup for the podcast. I figured I'd show that off because I did do like a setup video, but I probably won't edit it together because I get really bored of doing like, edited videos. That's the other thing. I can only stream and do podcasts. I hate editing normal YouTube videos for some reason. I used to really like it. Now I just am not a fan. I don't have like the deranged psycho brain that I used to have when I would make all those edits back then. So, And by back then, I mean like 10 years ago. So that's kind of the setup. I have two cameras and a bunch of different scene combinations. So, and obviously on the display, the main cam is just the camera, because no one's ever gonna replace this scene. So it's always gonna be me in the corner. So yeah. Um. So I didn't really plan much for this episode. I had the main topic of like talking about quitting YouTube on my mind, and so that's why I started it like this. But after that, I didn't plan much. I tried to find like topics to talk about and stuff like that, but I couldn't find any. But one thing did come to mind, and I have to find it because did it? Oh my god, it did drag my whole window over. What? Man, I had that over here for a reason. All right. So, POTUS Twitter. I think he cross posts everything on Twitter and Instagram, but on Joe Biden's Instagram and on Twitter too. Wow, this is really embarrassing. There's this tweet, and it was on Instagram, that he made where it's 4 headlines. And something really laughable and embarrassing about this. Now, as people know, I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I'm a leftist. So I pretty much don't like either political party. So before you immediately jump to, oh, he loves Trump, he wants Trump in his mouth, he wants Trump in his butt. No, I don't. I am farther left of either political party in this country, so I am not a fan of Joe Biden. So when Joe Biden tweets out, and it's not him, we know that, it's his fucking social media manager and like a team of 50,000 people trying to make sure he doesn't fuck up. When they tweet out, a CNN article, an Associated Press article, all these articles talking about, people buying stuff more, even though it's kind of skewed because it's, either right before Christmas or right after Christmas, so the big holiday season, and then, when they're like, oh, it's rising in January. Meanwhile, all these people have, like, Christmas money, all this shit to spend because of Christmas, because they probably got money. There's just a lot of factors that go into this. We don't have the full picture, but inflation is still shit. The economy still sucks. People can't make enough to live on their own or to eat. So, when we are over here trying to say this horseshit about, oh, consumerism's up, the economy's doing great now, inflation's slowing down. Inflation might be slowing down, but it's still inflated. It's still just as bad. It's just the rate of it going up is slowing down. Which, like, if anything, it should actually be going down. That's when it should be good news. But it's not good news because people can't eat, they can't afford rent or their mortgage, they can't afford their car payments, and they're going homeless. And they're working like 2 jobs and still going homeless. So he tweets out these and he goes, optimism is up. No, it's not. This is so embarrassing. Me and John were talking about this because me and John talk about this stuff all the time. And then we get on the podcast and riff about it for 2 hours. But we talk about this all the time. What metric are you using for optimism is up? The fact that we're measuring optimism based off of consumerism is disgusting. And to say that while we're in one of the most economically struggling times, while multiple unions are forming across the country now because businesses are failing that bad, that this is the highest I've ever seen any form of union support in years. The fact that people are working 2 jobs and still can't afford a normal sized 1-bedroom apartment in the city that they grew up in. The economy is not doing well. No one's optimistic about going nearly homeless right now. So this is just like beyond disgusting that they have the balls to tweet something like this. Now, don't get me wrong. The Biden administration is definitely in panic mode right now. I doubt the Democrats think this is going to be smooth sailing for the election. That's in, what, 9 months now? So, this election that's coming up, they are a little fucked. Trump has to be, like, in jail or dead for Joe Biden to win, and I don't even know if the jail thing is guaranteed to give Biden a win. He's lost a lot of the progressive vote, and he's now fucking up the moderate vote too with all this economy shit. So, and all these morons that think Trump is the better option, Trump is just as bad, if not worse, especially on the Gaza issue. But that's the thing, though, is that these progressives that don't like Biden anymore, they're not voting for Trump. They're just not voting at all. So, and so I live in Georgia, which, was a very, a very important state in the 2020 election and in the 2022 midterms. We were pretty much solely responsible for flipping the Senate to blue in 2020 and keeping it blue in 2022. And I voted in all those elections. I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary and Joe Biden in the general, and I voted for Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff in both the general and the runoff. So, and then I voted for Raphael Warnock again twice in the general and runoff elections in the midterms. So, imagine my disappointment when the Senate has still not done anything I wanted them to do when I voted for these people. When I voted Democrat, I thought maybe some kind of healthcare thing would be passed. Maybe the wars in the Middle East would stop. We just started a new war in Yemen. We pretty much did. I mean, I don't think we've declared war officially, but we just landed troops in Yemen. I see Dark Brandon is trending. He better have just passed a healthcare initiative while I'm talking. Okay, it's just liberals taking on the term. Great. Biden said that Trump is a sick fuck, and what a fucking asshole this guy is. Oh, wow.
Used on January 6th, and echoing the very same words used on January 6th. Where's Nancy? And he thinks that's funny. He laughed about it. What a sick... My God. And echoing the very...
Should have just said it. Why didn't he just say it?
It's American history who left office with fewer jobs than they took office. Herbert Hoover, and yes, Donald Herbert Hoover Trump. And by the way, have you noticed he's a little confused these days? He apparently can't tell the difference between Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. Well, folks, there are only two presidents in American history who left office with fewer jobs than they took office. Herbert Hoover, and yes, Donald Herbert Hoover Trump.
Wow, the charisma of a fucking cactus. Sorry, when he's trending like this, what is this? Is this an AI of Taylor Swift?
The United States.
Oh, God. I mean, it's kind of funny that he calls him a sick fuck and asshole, but that's what I'm saying, man. I no amount of ooh, look at how quirky and cool Biden is. No amount of that is gonna make me feel any better about his reelection. I'm telling you, I think he's fucked. I don't think he's gonna have a good chance in this election. Oh my God! Speaking of cactus, that's the first thing on money. Say hello to you. That's the first thing on my timeline. But yeah, It's just I think his campaign's pretty doomed. Because it's like why is the U.S. writing for Israel this hard? That's the biggest confusing thing about it. Is why are they running? Why are they writing for Israel this hard? What the fuck? I just spawned a John Ossoff tweet onto my feed by mentioning him. Sorry, real quick. What the fuck? Dude, he looks like he's like, what the fuck? Do you think Jordan Peterson mentioned Elmo and how much he wants to kill Elmo? How long before Peterson started crying? Once I mentioned Elmo? That's crazy. Oh, I love that tweet. Anyways. Yeah, I don't understand why the U.S. is writing so hard for Israel right now. It just seems like a kind of failing initiative. Because, I get that they're like our satellite state. My friend just said, you think they care about poor people? They don't. I get that they're like our satellite state in the Middle East. But I just feel like the supporting them through this entire obvious genocide at this point has made the U.S. just look way worse than it already did. Because, we already were like testing our luck with Vietnam. Then we really kind of ruined our world image with Iraq and the WMD thing. And we really tarnished it with Afghanistan. And then we really kind of fucked it with Syria and our treatment towards Iran under the Trump administration. And now we're really ruining it with the support for Israel and the ground invasion on Yemen that we're starting. And basically what looks like another forever war, which Biden explicitly said, we're not going to start any more forever wars especially in the Middle East, which is why we pulled out of Afghanistan in the first place. So I just don't understand what political gain we're going to get from siding with Israel with this whole thing. If the Biden administration's worried that the liberal camp is going to start crying anti-Semitism, I'm sorry, but it's super easy to explain to liberals if you are the Biden administration, it's incredibly easy to explain the difference between Zionism and Judaism. Zionism being the obsessive need to have a ultra right wing, ethnic state for Jewish people versus a religious group of people that have a multiple variety of viewpoints and views and consist of like many different people. Jews are not a monolith. They don't all support Israel. They don't all support massacring a people. Here's the solution that you could go with right now. Keep Israel the way it is, whatever. Have your Jewish ethno-state if you want it, if that's what you really want, even though I'd argue that having it in the Middle East makes them a little bit more unprotected than if you had made one in Europe, which I'll get into the reason why there's no Israel in Europe in a second, but keep it the way it is right now and just let Gaza and the West Bank go. Like, let them have their own thing. Pay them their reparations, let them do their own thing. If you just stopped occupying them and like basically walling them off on their own land masses like that, there would be no Hamas. Like, I don't think people understand that if Israel didn't treat Gaza and the West Bank the way it did, there would be no Hamas in Gaza. There would be no there is nothing in the West Bank. There's like little to no retaliation in the West Bank. The West Bank, is like the closest example to the closest equivalent to apartheid South Africa and segregation Jim Crow America as it gets. The videos from Al Jazeera of what the West Bank looks like before the October 7th attack is crazy. All the checkpoints, all the areas where they say you can't go if you're not Jewish, or if you're even remotely Palestinian. The reporter that went there is like ethnically Palestinian, was born there but didn't live there for very long, and is basically an American citizen now. She can't even go to those parts without like an ex-IDF chaperone that had to like, basically struggle to get her through these areas. So the West Bank is already pretty fucked, but they don't even have a Hamas. Like, that's the thing. They don't even have a terrorist group to go after. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if Israel just left them alone, there wouldn't even be that much of a conflict here. Even if they like opened up like an EU style open border policy, like, Palestinians can freely come in and out of Israel's, vice versa, Israelis can go freely in and out of the Gaza and West Bank. I meant to say the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. But there are so many solutions. That, or you absorb the West Bank and Gaza and make it one state, call it Israel or whatever, but give Palestinians equal civil rights and no more apartheid, and give them reparations and make them Israeli citizens. There are so many easier solutions than trying to massacre nearly 4 million people in both regions. I mean, once Gaza's gone, you think they're not going to turn their sights on the West Bank? You think they're not going to just wipe out the rest of the West Bank and absorb it? You think they're going to stop after that? I mean, they're surrounded by other Arab countries. You think they're not going to then go after Iraq, an already war-torn, torn apart, broken country that is still recovering from the decades of like fighting that they've been doing with America, the ravaged country that's been being torn apart by ISIS right now? Like, you don't think Israel's going to set their sights on a country like that with the full support of the U.S.? Especially if Trump is in office, you think Trump's not going to enable them and fund them to go into other countries surrounding them? You think they're not going to go and try to take Lebanon or anything like that? Like, let's be real here. They're obviously going to set their sights on that once the Palestinians are no longer an issue. So, it's just there's so many other solutions to this thing, and the Democratic administration's really falling flat. But let's talk about the other shortcomings of the Biden administration. He ran on affordable health care. He ran on student loan relief. All these progressive positions that I have yet to see an affordable health care plan. All I've seen is them pushing Obamacare further, which Obamacare is not universal health care. Obamacare is government subsidized health care that you're still going through a private insurance company. It's just now the federal government will sprinkle in some help every now and then. That's what Obamacare boils down to. Does it help? Yes, but is it enough? No. So, I've yet to see an affordable universal health care plan like Medicare for All. The student loan relief is taking so fucking long that it's like, I don't even know where it's at right now. It's going through so many hoops and everything. I've barely been able to keep up with the news on that. The IRS is still full of fucking lobbying money for TurboTax and all these fucking tax companies. That's never been reformed. Not that I ever expected them to reform that. The billionaire tax, I've seen little to no progress on that. The only thing that Biden's done that I agreed with was pulling out of Afghanistan, which has permanently ruined his approval rating, because moderates and liberals are too fucking stupid to understand that pulling out of Afghanistan, no matter who the president was would have been messy no matter what. You know, it's just that the Democrat president had the balls to fully go through with it. If Trump had done it in a second term, the outcome would have been the exact same. That we would have left shit there, people would have died, the Taliban would have easily taken back over Afghanistan. You know, and he's the one who like started the wheel on the Afghanistan pullout. Biden's just the one that finished it. Biden has continued the Title 42 abuse at the border. He has continued deporting immigrants at record numbers. You know, this whole Supreme Court thing with Texas, which I'll get into that in a second, it is still, you know, that's like the only thing so far that I've seen where they're like, yeah, you can't have barbed wire on the fence, like, and that's it. We're still deporting them in mass numbers under the Biden administration. As much as the Republicans want to make you think there's a border crisis, go ask the people at the border that live near the border in Texas, and they will tell you that there is not a border crisis in the way that they're saying there is. Oh yeah, the other thing I was going to get to in terms of why Israel is not in Europe, the whole creation of Israel started before the Holocaust. So a lot of people think when they learn in European history that the reason Israel exists is because of Nazi Germany and the Holocaust. That was definitely the push towards it. That was definitely the thing that finalized that plan. But the actual plans for Israel were long before that, because the British were basically like, and the rest of Europe were basically like, let's get these fucking Jews out of here. And then they went, hey, Zionists, want an Israeli state? And so they were going to put it in what is modern-day Uganda, and instead decided on putting it in Palestine. So the reasons for Israel are pretty anti-Semitic in nature. I believe it was Three Arrows that said if you had gone back in time to the First World War, to like right at the beginning of the First World War, and you had asked a like an intelligent scholar what country in Europe he thinks would have committed the mass genocide of Jews, they would have guessed like France, like, or any other country. It could have been Germany, it could have been England, it could have been France. But I think he used France mainly as an example because Europe had always been deeply anti-Semitic. You know, Jews have been displaced, you know, all over Europe. So that's like the main driving force behind the creation of Israel, is that they just didn't want Jews in Europe anymore. What else was I? Oh yeah, the Texas thing. Texas is talking about like seceding from the Union. There's something like that. I mean, they talk about that like every 16 months. Let's be real. Texas is always talking about seceding from the Union, despite there being no constitutional basis for it. But right now they are, you know, crying and bitching about the Supreme Court saying that they can't put barbed wire on a fence. And now they're like, what if we did Civil War II over the fact that we can't make our fences more deadly for the scary Mexicans coming over, or the scary Central Americans or South Americans coming over seeking asylum. And now there's like 16 other states that are in support of Texas. And of course, most of those, or a lot of those states, are from the former Confederacy. And a lot of them have sent National Guard troops over. And I'm like, you don't really want to start a civil war with a country that has nuclear bombs and predator drones. I feel like, you know, I'm super anti war and everything, and I'm not a fan of the military-industrial complex, but let's just say Lockheed's going to be salivating if Texas tries to secede and declare civil war on the United States. I'm just saying, you know, I'm really anti, you know, imperialist U.S. government, but the moment they try to do that, I'm wearing red, white, and blue. I'm on the side with the predator drones, dude. I saw someone be like leftist when there's an actual group trying to challenge the federal government, and they were trying to say that, instead of taking the opportunity to rise up against the federal government, we are instead gonna side with them for some reason. And I'm like, yeah, probably because the cause y'all are fighting for is to keep the border fence deadly and to keep drowning children. That's not a very noble cause. Ooh, I scored it on my face. Oops. But so I think like Legal Eagle had a really good video on it. And I think it's kind of cute, kind of funny that Texas thinks that it can actually secede. I guess by force it could. Legally it can't. But by force I guess it could if it like deployed a National Guard style military to like argue that it's no longer in the Union. But like what a disaster that would be. Every citizen there would lose Social Security, any federal benefit. Most of the states highlighted in the map that are supporting Texas receive more federal aid than any other state and more federal aid than what they're putting in. California and New York and all these places like that are essentially footing the bill for all these other Republican states' federal aid. So imagine the poverty rates that would be caused in states like Texas and, states like fucking Idaho and shit like that when they try to actually secede. It's laughable. But I'm more for the entertainment value of this. I think it'll be entertaining. I think it'll be funny when, people's neighbors are like, I'm going to go fight in the Civil War, and then they like get blown up by a predator drone, and then I get to buy their house. There was a really funny tweet that was like, can't wait for my neighbor to go join the war effort and get killed so I can buy his house on the cheap. And then they were like, connect the two backyards so my dogs have a lot of room to run around in. I just thought that was hilarious. Because that would probably cause another financial crisis, and then I could maybe afford a house. And isn't that the ultimate goal of all of this? Plummet the economy enough where I can afford a house. Because, if the housing market crashes, then I can actually buy one. It looks like John's texting me about more Israel stuff. But, man, it's a busy day in my DMs, I guess, for political commentary. And a busy day on the podcast for political commentary, too. My God. I almost said motherfucker. But yeah, let's see what the president's tweeting right now. Maybe he's his banner is Black History Month. Wonderful. Here's one. Oh, and it's trending. Oh God. This morning we got more proof that America's economy is the strongest in the world. A bird. 350,000 new jobs were created in the month of January. That matters. Wealth, wages, and employment are higher now than before the pandemic, and I won't stop fighting to keep our progress going. The problem with that is that the wages part is that it's not proportional with the prices of goods and services. So, and like living expenses. So, yes, wages, you'll be hard pressed to find a business that's paying their employees $7.25 an hour. It's out there, but it's not as often as it used to be. Businesses are more so paying around $9.20 to $13 an hour. And if you're lucky, about $15 an hour. And even then, that is the price of living expenses like rent and mortgages and stuff have gone up higher at a faster rate than wages have. So wages are still not meeting the standard that they need to be meeting. I think it's like now the minimum wage has to be like $25 an hour just to meet standard of living costs. And I've heard the arguments of like, oh, well, if you raise wages, then you're going to have to then raise prices on stuff. And that's not necessarily true. In 2022, corporations had the most profitable year that they've had in decades. And that is because they artificially price gouged everything. So they made a wider profit margin while wages remained stagnant. So essentially what it is that a lot of these companies and businesses can lower prices on stuff right now and return prices back to pre-inflation numbers before the pandemic and still afford to pay their employees the same rates that they're paying them now. And then people can afford more. So, like corporations like Amazon, they have like more money than God times 6, and yet they keep raising prices on stuff. Recently, they've been talking about raising the price on Prime Video and having ad-supported tiers. Companies like Disney are, like making it where you can't even share your account with other family members if you don't live in the same house as them. Same with Spotify. It's like all these companies are penny pinching so hard, and yet they make massive record profits. That's the biggest red flag. If you see a corporation making millions upon millions, if not billions in profits, and they're still insisting they need to raise the prices on stuff, they're lying to you. They just want more profits. That's literally it. They just want more profits. So this tweet's very misleading, and the wages are higher now than ever. Yes, wages are now higher than $10 an hour more on average. But the whole like $15 an hour minimum wage argument that we used to make in 2019 no longer works now. Even $20 an hour isn't enough. By most economist standards, you have to be making a minimum $25 an hour just to afford basic living standards. The same living standards that your grandparents were living under in the 60s and 70s, where they could have one person work, another person stay home, and still afford a pretty decent house in a neighborhood, and also raise a family on top of that, and afford luxury items. All of that while they were working for less pay than you're making now, because the standard of living costs so little. And keep in mind, I'm talking about white grandparents, so obviously white people benefited from that way more back then. But that's what I'm saying. The standards now have changed. Wages have not stayed consistent with cost of living and cost of goods and services. This tweet's super misleading. I guess one last thing, because this one has to do with Israel. And it's kind of weak, but it's something. Also, I don't know what this guy's talking about. He's called him Joel, too. Might be a bot. Nina Turner replied to this, too. It's only a start. Oh, okay. Joe Biden tweets, which obviously we know it's not Joe Biden. I signed an executive order allowing the U.S. to issue sanctions against those who direct or participate in acts of violence against civilians in the West Bank, including extremist settlers. Today's actions seek to promote security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. So this only affects the West Bank, which we'll see how good this does on we'll see how good this does on anything, because I don't know what, I guess there are some Americans that also visit the West Bank and have like settled in parts of the West Bank and then come back to America occasionally, and they might run businesses. This just seems like a very empty piece of executive order. Like, it seems like a very empty statement. And like this person right here, he massacred 27,000 Palestinians and expect a meaningless gesture to against 4 people who will hardly care any more than the rest of us to win back some of the millions of votes he lost. Do I have that right? And then Nina Turner puts, good, this is only a start. There needs to be a ceasefire, an end to funding, and an end to the blockade and occupation. Over 27,000 Palestinians are dead, and the U.S. government is complicit. I mean, good honor for, saying stuff like this, calling for a ceasefire. And that's what I'm saying. Until the U.S. government officially releases a statement of ceasefire, then nothing's going to change. And on top of that, our favorite shitbag in Congress, who's no longer the speaker or even the minority leader of the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, who I forgot was even still in the House, is now taking this like weird MAGA style approach to the protesters and ceasefire people. She's calling them either anti-Semitic, or she's saying that they are in China's pocket, or that they are being controlled by Putin. And what a ridiculous thing to hear. I want to see if I can find the video. Nancy Pelosi Putin clip. Because she's like trying to claim that protesters outside her house are agents of Putin. Here's one where she says, "Go back to China where your headquarters is." Here. Oh, never mind. That actually might be an old clip. Let me get the facts right, because I know she did say that the protesters are, basically working for Putin. And then she said some should be investigated if they're pro-Palestinian protesters. So, I mean, what do you even say to that when one of the more powerful congresswomen is saying that pro-Palestinian protesters are working for the Russian government? This is what I'm saying when I say liberal old Democrats just need to leave the office now. Like they're worn out, they're over, their ideology is outdated. The fact that we're still using like Russian like, oh, the Russians, they're trying to make it where we call for a ceasefire. Like, what are we doing here? Most of the planet is calling for a ceasefire. A lot of the UN is calling for a ceasefire. Are they all Russian? Are they not also pro-Ukrainian? How are they also Russian in nature? So none of it makes sense. And Nancy Pelosi is a hack and stupid. So that's where I'm going to end it. That's all I have to say. I think I've yapped long enough. I think it's sad what's going on in our government. I think the U.S. empire has been over for a while now, and I feel like it's just a matter of time before either A, we fall, or and have like full government reformation, or B, we have a Nazi Germany style uprising in the form of Trump. Because based on the signs, we have the early signs of a Nazi Germany style government. If you research the decades leading up to Nazi Germany, like the Weimar Republic and post World War I, like German politics and the leaders that were like spouting the same rhetoric that Republicans are now, like, the left, blah, 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 and they're claiming all this stuff about leftists and communists and socialists, and saying that there are, like diseases within their borders that they need to like purge from the country, basically referring to Jews. In the same way that when our government says it, they're referring to the immigrants coming over the border. All I'm saying, and trans people in a way, all I'm saying is that we have the early stages of a Nazi Germany style US government. So, anyway, that's the end of the episode. I will probably start doing some election stuff soon on here, because I want, probably on Forbidden FM, I'll do special election episodes, because there's an election this year. Why not? I might as well. So anyway, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. We're on Spotify, we're on Patreon, and we also have a Discord. So, and we're also on Apple Podcasts. So and YouTube Music. So yeah, go listen, go watch on there if you want. Thanks for watching, and that's it.